The night the network went dark. It all started the night the network went dark. When the announcement hit that Jimmy Kimmel Live was on pause, Twitter exploded with theories. Memes, debates, and accusations filled the airwaves. Everyone thought they knew what had happened. Politics. Ratings. Network censorship. People had their guesses, their conspiracies. But no one had any idea what came after the cameras stopped rolling for the last time. I know, because I was still there. I wasn't a producer, a writer, or even a camera operator. I was just a night shift crew member. The one who swept the floors, boxed up the props, and made sure everything was in place before everyone else left for the night. A simple job, the kind of job that didn't make waves. That night, though, something felt different. It wasn't just the quiet, it was wrong. The studio wasn't empty, it felt like it was waiting. Watching. The final crew members packed up and left. I stayed behind to finish my checklist. My duties weren't glamorous, but they were necessary. The building felt unusually still, like the hum of the equipment, the chatter of the crew, had suddenly stopped. I figured it was just the odd stillness of a late night, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That's when I noticed it. Behind the main stage curtain, near the pile of old skit props and cables, I saw a seam in the wall. I had never seen it before, and I knew every inch of this place. At first, I thought it was just a shadow. But when I brushed away the dust, there was something more. A handle. I froze. The handle was unnaturally cold, sending a shock of ice through my fingertips. My skin burned from the chill. I stepped back, my breath fogging in the air, but this was a warm Los Angeles studio. No draft, no cold spots. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. This was wrong. I should have left. But curiosity is a hard thing to ignore. I pulled open the door. Cold, stale air rushed out. It smelled like wet concrete, damp and musty, like a forgotten basement. A feeling crawled up my spine. The hallway beyond was narrow, twisting in ways that made no sense within the familiar studio layout. It was darker than it should have been, the kind of darkness that seemed to absorb the light. And then I heard it. The hum. Low, persistent, and deep. A sound like bass feedback, the kind that rattles your teeth, sinks into your bones. It wasn't just sound. It was a presence, an oppressive force that hung in the air, pressing down on me. I should have left. Instead, I stepped further in. The hallway stretched, impossibly long, much longer than the studio's floor plan could account for. The wooden floor creaked under my shoes, each step an echo in the void. At one point, I looked down and swore I saw my own shadow out of sync, moving half a second after I did. It was like something was wrong with time itself. At the end of the hallway, I found a doorless frame, a black circle of a room beyond it. No windows. No light. But when I looked inside, I could see everything. It wasn't just dark, it was like the room had its own kind of vision. A kind of blackness that didn't need light to exist. In the center of the room, there was a chair. And on the chair was a flickering screen. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe a TV, some old equipment, or just a malfunction. But no. On the screen, Jimmy's face appeared, pale, grainy, distorted like an old VHS tape. His eyes were hollow, his face not smiling. There was no audience laughter, no desk, no typical monologue. Just his face, flickering like a glitch, saying the same words over and over. We must clear the air. We must start fresh. It wasn't funny. It wasn't part of any sketch. It didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like an order. And it made the hairs on my arms stand up. I turned, startled by the sound of footsteps behind me. A senior producer stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes too wide, too knowing. Don't stare too long, she said, her voice quiet but urgent. It gets inside your head. I was about to ask her what this place was, but she spoke before I could. This is the review room. I stared at her, confused. The writer's room is upstairs, I said, trying to piece it together. She didn't laugh. She didn't even blink. This is where the show is really rewritten, she said. Her voice was flat, drained. Not by us. Before I could ask what she meant, the lights flickered and cut out. For 30 seconds, there was nothing but blackness. No sound. No movement. Just the hum, growing louder. The vibrations were in my chest now, shaking my ribcage. And then something brushed my leg, something fast, low to the ground. I whipped around, but there was nothing there. When the lights flickered back on, the chair in the center of the room was empty. The screen was blank. For a moment, the room was silent. And then, the screen lit up again. But this time, it wasn't showing Jimmy's face. Instead, it was a live feed of the hallway I had just walked down. But there were 3 figures standing there now. Shadows. Tall, unidentifiable forms, standing perfectly still. Motionless. They weren't mine. I turned to the producer, but she wasn't there anymore. The hallway was empty. The room was empty. At least, I thought it was. I convinced myself I wouldn't go back. I told myself it was a dream, just some weird glitch in the system. But the next night, I found myself drawn back. I tried to tell myself it was just curiosity. It wasn't. It was something else. Night after night, I went back. Each time, the room looked different. One night, chalk symbols covered the walls, intersecting circles, strange runes I couldn't recognize. The air was thick, suffocating. The next night, there were candles. Hundreds of them, burning on the floor, though no one had lit them. The space felt, watched. Like something was always just behind me. And the screen. The screen started whispering. At first, it was just snippets of Jimmy's voice from old episodes, lines spliced together in a way that made no sense. But then, it grew more personal. Full sentences. Spoken directly into my head. "Come back," it whispered. "We need you." I'd wake up in my bed with his words still echoing in my ears. My body was breaking down. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I was losing track of time. My coworkers started noticing. They said I looked sick. By the 5th night, I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or awake anymore. I'd see my reflection smile when I wasn't. I'd hear the applause from the studio audience, but I was standing in my own bathroom. And then, the text came. Stage. Now. I didn't question it. The studio was dark when I arrived, empty. But as I walked toward the main stage, I saw the crew, all of them, standing in silence, their eyes fixed on the center of the stage. A single spotlight lit up the floor. Jimmy stood under it. He wore the same suit he always wore, but it was darker, almost wet, like it had been soaked through. His hair was slicked back, his face pale. But his eyes weren't the eyes I remembered. They were hollow. Distant. He didn't look at us. He didn't acknowledge us at all. Instead, he began speaking. Not jokes. Not monologue material. Chants. Low, rhythmic. Words I couldn't understand. He spoke them like they were ancient, pulling something up from the floor itself. I realized then what he meant. This wasn't just a late-night show. This wasn't a comedy routine. This was something else. Something darker. The camera crew kept filming. Even though there was no audience. Even though the lights were the only thing that illuminated us. And then, I saw them. Shadows in the rafters. Tall, crooked figures moving like they were underwater. They clapped, their hands colliding in rhythm. Hundreds of hands, all clapping at once, deafening in the silence. The sound of it was like thunder, like the world itself was applauding. The audience wasn't real. Not all of it. Jimmy's eyes locked onto mine, his smile wide, stretching unnaturally. It was a grin that stretched too far, like it was made of rubber. And then, he pointed at me. I turned to run, but the doors were locked from the outside. I slammed against them, but they didn't budge. The red on-air sign above me flickered, glowing brighter than I had ever seen it before. The candles blew out one by one, plunging us into complete darkness. And then, something spoke. It wasn't Jimmy. It wasn't anyone human. It came from the rafters. It said my name. When the lights returned, the crew was still standing there, frozen. Their faces blank. Jimmy stepped closer, put a hand on my shoulder, and whispered. "Don't worry. This is just rehearsal." I froze. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. His hand on my shoulder was cold, too cold for someone who had just been standing in a warm studio light. It was like he wasn't there, but through me. His grip tightened slightly, as if to hold me in place, as if I was part of the scene now, part of the show. The words hit me like a hammer, knocking the breath from my chest. The studio was silent, save for the low hum vibrating through the floor. But then, a noise. A shifting sound, like something moving in the dark. I couldn't focus on it. All I could feel was the weight of his hand on my shoulder, the pressure of his words sinking deeper into me. He was not who he had been. There was something else there, something older. Something wrong. And then, just like that, I woke up. I wasn't in the studio anymore. I wasn't anywhere near it. I was lying in the parking lot. The night was still, and for a moment, I thought I might have just imagined it all. A bad dream, a sick hallucination. But my heart was racing. I could still feel his touch on my shoulder. The sensation was so vivid, so real, that it was impossible to ignore. My car was parked in the same spot as I had left it, untouched. My phone was in my hand. I tried to unlock it, but it didn't respond. I tapped the screen repeatedly, but it was frozen. When I tried to open my photos, there was nothing. Every image, every video I had taken inside the studio, gone. Wiped clean. I stared at the blank screen, my pulse quickening. How could this happen? I never erased anything. I hadn't done anything to cause this. Panic set in, and I called my supervisor, the one I always spoke to when something went wrong. But when I dialed, the number was out of service. I tried again. No connection. Nothing. The next morning, when I went to work, it was like nothing had ever happened. The studio was quiet, sterile, as if it had all been a bad dream. The crew didn't mention anything, and no one talked about the hiatus. There was no sign of the strange hallway, the room, or the whispering scream. It was like I had imagined it all, a trick of the mind, a stress-induced breakdown. Except, I couldn't shake the feeling. Something was still there. Watching. Then, the statement came from the network: production hiatus extended until further notice. No mention of the crew. No mention of me. That night, I drove past the studio. I thought I might find answers. I thought I might see something, anything, that would explain what had happened. The windows were dark, the place silent. But the red "On Air" sign still glowed, flickering eerily in the night. For just a second, I saw them. The silhouettes in the window. They were standing there, just out of sight. And then I heard it. The laughter. It was faint at first, like an echo, but it grew louder, clearer. It wasn't the kind of laughter I remembered from the show. It wasn't warm, wasn't genuine. It was hollow. Empty. Like a laugh from a nightmare. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I drove away. But even now, as I sit here, writing this down, I still hear it. That faint, mocking laugh. It echoes in my head when I'm trying to sleep, when I'm alone, when the world is quiet. I don't think Jimmy Kimmel Live was ever really cancelled. I think it just moved. Somewhere we can't follow. Somewhere the lights never go off. And now, I know. It's waiting. Somewhere behind that dark screen.